It's morning, 5:45. The alarm clock by my bed is still silent, but I'm already awake. After 75, sleep becomes intermittent, light as a feather in the wind. I'm not complaining though. Early risings allow me to savor the quiet before the world outside the windows begins to bustle. I take a deep breath, listening to the creaks of my old house in Sandy Springs. It's almost as old as I am. When Harold and I first moved here, the house seemed huge to us. Now that I live alone, it seems just right. Not too big to feel lost, but big enough to feel like I own my space. Grunting, I climb out from under the blanket. My feet find the soft slippers given by my granddaughter Emma last Christmas, the only gift I received from my son's family last year. I throw on a robe and go into the kitchen. The coffee maker, my faithful friend, is already flashing green. I programmed it from the evening before. As the coffee drips into the cup, I look out the window at the quiet street. My name is Jean Tanner. I'm 78 years old, and I've worked most of my life as an accountant for River Edge Construction. 15 years ago, I was widowed. Harold left so suddenly that sometimes I still catch myself thinking I need to buy his favorite kind of coffee, or that he's about to walk through the door. The heart attack didn't give us a chance to say goodbye. With the first sip of coffee, I look at the bills spread out on the kitchen table. The pension is enough, but it's tight. Good thing the house is almost paid off, just a few mortgage payments left. Harold insisted on a 30-year term, and now I'm grateful for his foresight. True, property taxes are rising every year, eating up more and more of my modest budget. The phone makes a short Trilla message. I know who it's from before I even pick up the phone. Doug, my only son, only texts on 2 occasions, when he needs urgent help with the kids or when unexpected expenses arise. Mom, Thelma and I need to be at an important meeting tomorrow at 6. Can you pick the kids up from school and babysit until 8? I sigh. Not, good morning, how are you doing? Not sorry about the early hour. Just a direct request, more like a demand. And of course, no mention of compensating me for my time or thanking me for my help. But I reply anyway. Okay, I'll be at the school at 3:30. In return, I get a terse okay without even a thank you. This relationship with Doug didn't happen all at once. He was once a sweet boy with an open smile and an inquisitive gaze. But as the years went by, a wall grew between us with each passing year. Maybe I worked too hard when he was a teenager. Maybe I should have paid more attention to his problems. Or did things change when he met Thelma? I'm not sure. All I know is that now I'm a convenient ATM and a free babysitter. Doug works as an insurance adjuster for a big company. He makes good money, especially since Thelma also works as a receptionist at a dental clinic. But they're always short. There's a new car, necessarily an SUV, although they never go beyond the paved roads. Then the renovation of the house, then a private school for Emma and Josh, and every time they need money, they think of me. I finish my coffee and go to get dressed. At 10, I have a meeting with my neighbor Barbara. We go to the supermarket together every Tuesday. Barbara is the only person I can have a frank conversation with. She too is a widow, and she too suffers from the neglect of her children. Only unlike me, her children are all over the country and only occasionally call to check on their health. Jean, have you seen the new specials at Kroger? Barbara meets me at her gate waving a flyer. 20% off all frozen foods. Good morning, Barb. No, I haven't seen it. The mail must be late again. We're walking to the bus stop. I sold my car a long time ago after I drove into my neighbor's mailbox 2 years ago. My eyesight isn't what it used to be, and neither is my reaction time. Public transportation doesn't run very often in Sandy Springs, but Barbara and I have no hurry. How are the kids? She asks as we take a seat on the half-empty bus. The usual. Tomorrow I have to spend the rest of the evening with the grandkids again. Did they give you any advance warning this time? If you count a message at 6 in the morning as a warning? Barbara shakes her head. You know, sometimes I think we're lucky our kids grew up before the age of cell phones. Imagine, they'd text us at all hours of the day and night. Mom, I'm running late. Mom, give me money. Mom, I'm not coming to dinner. All in lieu of a phone call instead of hearing our voice and at least pretending they cared how we felt. I nod. There's truth in Barbara's words. Technology has made communication easier but not deeper. How's your arthritis? I change the subject. I'd rather you didn't ask. Barbara wrinkles her nose. Dr. Pinsky says I need surgery, but insurance only covers part of it, and I don't have enough in my pension to cover it. There it is, our usual retirement conversation: health, money, ungrateful children. Sometimes I think Barbara and I have become caricatures of older women. But then I remind myself that it's just life, just the way it is. At the supermarket, we split up. Barbara goes for dairy products, I head for vegetables. My modest shopping list fits on a quarter-page notebook: tomatoes, cucumber, chicken breast, bread, milk, tea. Cooking just for myself alone isn't very inspiring, so I often snack on sandwiches or reheat frozen dinners. Jean, look what I found! Barbara walks over to me, holding a brightly colored magazine. Best cruises for older travelers. It's got special deals for single passengers over 65. I take the magazine and flip through the glossy pages. Pictures of the azure waters of the Caribbean, white sand beaches, luxury liners with swimming pools and restaurants. It all seems so far from my reality, like pictures from another life. Harold and I have always dreamed of going on a cruise, I say, handing the magazine back to Barbara. We'd save it for the golden years. And then he died, and somehow we didn't have time to travel. Why don't you go now? Barbara's not backing down. You have savings, I know. You said yourself you were saving for a rainy day. Yeah, but no buts, Jean Tanner. Barbara firmly hands me the magazine back. The rainy day already came 15 years ago when you lost Harold. How much longer are you going to put life on hold? At our age, there may not be a later. I stare at my friend, surprised at her assertiveness. Usually quiet and reserved, Barbara looks almost belligerent now. Pick up a magazine, study the offerings. What do you have to lose? She continues. Worst case scenario, you decide it's not for you. At best, you'll finally fulfill your and Harold's dream. With a heavy sigh, I put the magazine in my basket. Barbara smiles victoriously. That evening, after dinner, warmed soup and half a tuna sandwich, I pull out the magazine and start perusing the cruise company's offerings. The more I read, the more my interest is piqued. The prices, of course, bite, but maybe Barbara's right. Maybe it's time to finally spend some of my savings on myself. I pull out the old tin cookie box where I keep my papers. Inside, among the insurance policies and utility receipts, is a bank statement. In the account is an amount that should be enough not only for the cruise, but also for unexpected expenses while traveling. The money is partly my savings from years of work, partly the insurance money from Harold's death. I've been saving it all these years, saving it for that rainy day. The phone rings again. This time it's not a text, but a real call. It's Doug again. Mom, hi? He doesn't have his usual harshness in his voice, which means he needs something. How are you? I'm fine, thanks, I said, wondering how long it would be before he got to the point of the call. Listen, here's the thing. Josh's birthday is coming up and we want to throw him a birthday party. It's his 8th birthday, but we have a lot of expenses this month. Thelma wrecked her car, so we had to get it repaired. That's it. I can almost hear the gears in his head turning, picking the right words to get money out of me. How much do you need, Doug? I interrupt him. Pause. He clearly didn't expect me to get to the point so quickly. Well, we were thinking about $500. We want animators, a trampoline, and a spaceship cake. Josh is obsessed with space. $500. For the birthday party of an 8-year-old who's not likely to remember this party in a couple years. I look at the cruise magazine, the bank statement in my hands, and suddenly I feel something inside me break. Or maybe it's the other way around. I'm sorry, Doug, but I don't have that kind of money, I say firmly. What? But Mom, I know you have savings. You said so yourself. That's true, but I plan to spend it on myself. I've decided to go on a cruise. The silence on the other end of the line is so deep, I can almost hear Doug blink in surprise. A cruise? You? He sounded incredulous. Mom, you're 78 years old. What cruise? That's exactly why I want to go now while I still can. I've been putting this dream off for too long, but that's crazy. Now Doug's not hiding his annoyance. You're going to spend a lot of money on what? A week at sea? What if you get sick? What if something happens to you? Who's going to look after you? The ship's staff will look after me, I answer calmly. And the money is my money, Doug. I've earned it over 40 years as an accountant, and I have the right to spend it as I see fit. But Josh, his birthday. You and Thelma can throw him a small but heartfelt party without my money. Invite his friends, bake a cake, come up with some contests. Kids need attention, not expensive entertainers. I can hear Doug sighing deeply. Okay, Mom, do whatever you want. But don't complain later if something goes wrong. He hangs up without saying goodbye, typical of him. I put the phone away and look at the cruise magazine again. Talking to Doug has only strengthened my resolve. For 15 years, I've lived my life thinking first about the needs of my son and his family. It's time to start thinking about myself. The next day, I go to the travel agency at the mall. A sweet girl named Carol helps me choose the right cruise. 7 days in the Caribbean with stops in the Bahamas, Jamaica, and Mexico. A mid-deck balcony stateroom, full board, and several excursions are included. Are you traveling alone, Mrs. Tanner? Carol asks, filling out the reservation. Yes, I answer. My first big trip in many years. It's going to be a memorable trip, she smiles. The cruise companies are very accommodating to older passengers. There will be special activities organized for you on board, and the staff is always ready to help. I sign the documents and make a deposit. The cruise is scheduled for the end of May, 2 months from now. Plenty of time to get ready and maybe lose a little weight for a beach vacation. Walking out of the agency with a folder of documents in hand, I feel a strange excitement, almost euphoric. For the first time in many years, I have done something significant solely for myself. And this feeling is unusual, but pleasant. I sit down on a bench in the mall to catch my breath and dial Barbara's number. Barb, I did it. I booked the cruise. Jean, she exclaims, I'm so happy for you. Where are you going? The Caribbean. 7 days in May. A cabin with a balcony, can you imagine? Oh, it's going to be amazing. I'm so proud of you, my friend. You deserve this trip. We talk for a few more minutes, discussing the details of the trip and what I'll need to buy. Barbara suggests we go shopping together for a new swimsuit and summer clothes. I agree, although the thought of trying on swimsuits at my age is a little intimidating. In the evening, I sit in my living room looking through brochures about the cruise. My cat Oscar is nestled next to me, purring his evening song. It's already dark outside my window, and in the silence of the house I can only hear the ticking of the clock and the purring of the cat. Suddenly a strange feeling comes over me, a mixture of joy and a slight sadness. It's a shame Harold can't share this journey with me. He would have enjoyed the cruise. He always loved the sea, although he rarely visited the coast due to his constant busyness at work. We planned so many things for retirement, but never had time to make our dreams a reality. It's okay, darling, I whisper as if Harold might hear me. I'll go for both of us. And I'll look out to sea from the cabin balcony every morning, just like we dreamed. Oscar lifts his head and blinks as if he knows what I'm talking about. I stroke his soft fur and smile. There's a new adventure ahead, the first in years. And I'm ready for it, despite all my fears and doubts. A week has passed since the day I booked the cruise at the travel agency. Every morning I woke up with a pleasant excitement in my chest. For the first time in years, I had a goal, something to look forward to. I even started watching my diet more closely and went out for a half-hour walk every day to get in shape for the trip. On Tuesday, when I returned from my walk, I found a letter from a travel agent. Upon opening the envelope, I read that I needed to create a personal account on the cruise company's website to confirm my reservations and select excursions. In order to save paper and care for the environment, all further operations were to be conducted via the internet. I had a computer, an old laptop given to me by Doug 3 years ago when he bought himself a new one. But I didn't know much about the internet. I used it mostly for reading the news and occasionally for video calls with my grandchildren on holidays. Creating accounts, passwords, personal accounts, all this caused me a slight panic. After an hour of agony and 3 failed attempts, I still made it through. The personal account was created and I was able to access my booking. The screen displayed the details of my cruise. Caribbean Dream, 7 nights, departing May 23rd from Miami. Balcony stateroom on deck 8, number 812. I stared at the ship's schematic, trying to imagine walking the decks, dining in the restaurants, watching the sunsets from the balcony of my cabin. The thought that soon I would see the same turquoise waters and white beaches that I had only seen in photos so far filled me with a kind of childlike excitement. The system offered to make full payment now to get a 5% discount. I hesitated. The amount was not small, but the discount was also significant. In the end, I decided to consult with Barbara and postponed the final decision until tomorrow. In the evening, I got a call from Thelma, which in itself was unusual. Usually all communication was through Doug or through messages. Jean, hello. Her voice sounded unnaturally cheerful. How are you doing? I'm fine, thank you, Thelma. I replied warily. Did something happen? Oh no, nothing like that. I just wanted to see how you were doing. Doug said you were planning some kind of trip? Oh, that's it. They were more interested in my spending than my health or my well-being. Yes, I've booked a cruise to the Caribbean, I replied discreetly. A cruise! Thelma exclaimed with feigned admiration. How exciting! And when are you going? At the end of May, for a week. And you're going alone? Aren't you afraid? There was a condescending tone in her voice that I knew so well. Thelma always spoke to me a little condescendingly, as if I were not her husband's mother, but a capricious child to be controlled. No, I'm not, I answered firmly. The ship will be full of staff and other passengers. It's a very safe vacation for the elderly. Of course it is, Thelma agreed hastily. It's just, Doug and I are a little worried. After all, you're not young anymore. What if something happens? I'm holding back my irritation. I'll be fine, Thelma, but thanks for your concern. How much does a cruise like this cost, if it's no secret? She asked casually. Now we're getting to the bottom of the call. Quite expensive, I answered evasively, but I'd been saving for a trip like this for a long time. I see, Thelma said. Well, I hope you have a good time. Emma misses you a lot, by the way. Why don't you come and visit us this weekend? This sudden change of subject was such an obvious manipulation that I could barely contain my laughter. If Emma really missed me, she could call herself. She'd had a phone since she was 10. Tell her I miss her too. I'm busy this weekend, but maybe next week. After a few more minutes of awkward conversation, Thelma said goodbye. I put the phone away, feeling vaguely uneasy. This call was unusual. Thelma rarely showed interest in my life, and her sudden curiosity seemed suspicious. The next morning, I told Barbara about the call when we met in the park for our usual walk. They're up to something, Barbara said firmly, adjusting her hat. I'd pay for the cruise in full and print out all the paperwork as soon as possible if I were you. Just to be on the safe side. You think they're going to interfere with my trip? I wondered. It's my money, my reservation. Jean, honey, you're too trusting, Barbara shook her head. I've seen the way your Doug looks at your house every time he comes over, like it's his future property. I'm sure he's already mentally managing your savings. Barbara's words hurt me, but deep down I knew there was some truth to them. Doug had hinted several times in recent years that I should consider moving to a nursing home, where professionals would take care of you, Mom. And each time after these conversations, he would casually ask who the house was in his name and if I had a will. When I got home, I decided to take Barbara's advice and finalize the cruise payment. I turned on my computer, logged into my personal account on the cruise company's website, and was about to enter my credit card information when the phone rang. It was Doug. Mom, hi! His voice sounded unusually cheerful. What are you doing? Just going to pay for the cruise, I answered honestly. Oh, that's great. Listen, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Did you know that I have a friend, Pete, who works for a travel agency? No, I didn't know that, I answered cautiously. Yeah, we play golf sometimes. Anyway, I told him about your cruise, and he says he can get you a bigger discount than the standard 5%, maybe as much as 15%, I frowned. Why the sudden concern? Thanks, Doug, but I've already arranged everything through the travel agency. Mom, you don't understand, he said, a familiar note of impatience in his voice. 15% is a serious savings. You can use that money to take additional excursions or upgrade your cabin to a mini suite. Something about his insistence made me even more wary. I appreciate your concern, but I think I'll stick with what I've got. Fine, suit yourself. His tone turned cooler. Just trying to help. After a brief pause, he asked casually, Have you registered on the cruise company's website yet? Created a personal account and everything? Yes, I figured it out yesterday, I replied, wondering how he knew such details. Great! Again, that playfully cheerful tone. Listen, and let me help you with the choice of excursions. I know a little about the Caribbean. I've been there on a business trip a couple times. I can tell you what's worth seeing. Thanks, but I haven't gotten to the tour selection yet. I have to pay the balance of the cruise first. Oh, I see. Well, when you're ready, let me know. Oh, by the way, you know how the internet can be a little slow, right? Maybe I should come over to your place and help you with all this. Computers are such a pain in the ass for your generation. Now I'm finally convinced something's wrong. Doug never offered to help, much less with computers. He usually just sighed irritably when I asked him to explain how a program worked. You know, I can do this on my own, I said firmly. If there are any problems, I'll ask the travel agency for help. Whatever you say, his voice was cold again. I just wanted to help my own mother. After that conversation, I felt even more uncomfortable. Something was definitely wrong. Doug had never taken such an interest in my affairs unless he had something to gain from it. I decided to pay the balance of the cruise fee immediately. I entered my credit card information, confirmed the payment, and breathed a sigh of relief when a successful transaction message appeared on the screen. The cruise was now fully paid for, and no one could cancel the reservation. Just in case, I printed out the booking and payment confirmation and saved copies on a flash drive that I hid in the jewelry box, a place Doug would never look. 2 days after payment, I received an envelope in the mail with tickets, luggage tags, and a booklet about the ship. As I looked at the glossy pages with images of luxurious decks, pools, and restaurants, I could feel the excitement building. This is really happening. I'm really going on a cruise. That evening, as I was getting ready for bed, the doorbell rang. Doug was standing on the doorstep, which was unusual. He rarely dropped by unannounced, especially at this late hour. Doug? Is something wrong? I tensed involuntarily, expecting bad news. It's nothing, Mom. He smiled and squeezed past me into the hallway. I was just in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by. Thelma said you got the cruise tickets? How did Thelma know about the tickets? I didn't tell her anything. Yeah, they came today, I answered cautiously. That's great. Can I see them? I'd always been curious about what cruise tickets looked like. I hesitated. Something in his demeanor seemed unnatural, contrived. They're in the bedroom, on the nightstand. Wait here, I'll get them. Come on, Mom, I'll get it. Doug was on his way to the stairs leading up to the second floor. I'm going to see how you live here. I haven't been upstairs in a while. Before I could object, he was on his way up the stairs. I followed him, feeling a growing uneasiness. In the bedroom, Doug immediately noticed the envelope with the cruise company logo on it. Aha, here they are. He grabbed the envelope before I could say anything. Let's see. He pulled out the tickets and started studying them like it was the most interesting reading of his life. Wow, Deck 8, a cabin with a balcony. You didn't skimp, Mom. I've dreamed of this trip for a long time, I said, trying to hide my annoyance. And it's my money, Doug. Sure, he continued to study the papers. Oh, look, there's a spa treatment included, and dinner at a special restaurant on the last night. It's awesome. I silently watched him going through the papers, looking at the brochures, reading the terms and conditions. Something in his behavior made me uneasy, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. You know, Mom, he said suddenly, not lifting his eyes from the papers. I've been thinking, you'd be lonely in the cabin alone, wouldn't you? And if you get sick, who's going to help you? There are medical personnel on the ship, I answered dryly. And I'm perfectly capable of calling for help if I need it. Yeah, but still, Doug finally looked up at me. Maybe you should take a companion with you. Like me? I almost laughed at the audacity of it. Doug, this cruise has been a dream of mine for years. I want to enjoy it alone without having to adjust to someone else's schedule or preferences. I understand, he nodded with feigned sympathy. But think about it. By the way, where's your passport? You'll need it for the cruise. It's in the safe in my office, I answered, surprised at the change of subject. Good, Doug smiled a strange smile. Well, I'm glad you're all set for your trip. I think I'm going to go now that it's getting late. He put all the papers back into the envelope and handed it to me. I took the envelope, feeling inexplicably relieved that I had the tickets again. Thanks for stopping by, I said as I walked him to the door. You're welcome, Mom. Good night. When the door closed behind Doug, I leaned against the wall, trying to comprehend what had just happened. His sudden visit, his strange questions, his unusual interest in the details of my trip. It didn't fit into the usual pattern of our relationship. I went back to the bedroom and opened the envelope again to see if everything was in place. Going through the papers, I suddenly noticed that one of the tickets looked different than I remembered. Looking closer, I was horrified to find that the name on it was not Gene Tanner, but Douglas Tanner. With trembling hands, I checked the second ticket. It had the name Thelma Tanner on it. My heart raced. What's going on? How could this be possible? I rushed to my computer and struggled to turn it on with my naughty fingers. Going to the cruise company's website, I tried to log into my personal account, but the system gave me an error. Invalid password. I tried again, carefully entering each character. Again, the error. After several unsuccessful attempts, the system offered to restore the password. I agreed, and a link was sent to my email. Following it, I created a new password and was finally able to enter my personal cabinet. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. The booking information read, Passenger 1, Douglas Tanner, Passenger 2, Thelma Tanner change date, yesterday at 15:40. I stared at the screen in horror. My son had somehow changed the reservation information. But how? And then I remembered. Yesterday afternoon, the computer had been on when I left for the store. I had forgotten to log out of my account on the cruise company's website. Doug must have gotten in while I was gone. He always had a spare key just in case, and made changes to the reservation. With trembling hands, I dialed my son's number. Doug, what did you do? I asked as soon as he answered. Why are your and Thelma's names on my reservation now? A brief pause and then laughter. Not embarrassed, not guilty, smug. Ah, you've already noticed. Faster than I expected. Doug, this is my cruise. I paid for it. I planned it. Yeah, you paid for it, he agreed nonchalantly. But you have to admit, there's nothing for you to do. At your age, traveling like that is a risk. And Thelma and I have long dreamed of a good vacation. I want everything back the way it was. I felt my voice shaking with anger. I'm afraid that's not possible, Mom, he said, his voice now clearly mocking. No changes in the names of passengers are allowed after they've paid in full. That's the rule. But don't worry, we'll bring you back a souvenir. Doug, how could you? My voice shook with resentment and rage. I'm your mother. Thanks, but I'm going without you. He laughed. Okay, Mom, don't take it personally. You really should stay home. You get tired quickly. You can't stand the heat. What kind of cruise would you want? I heard him put his hand over the receiver and shout, Thelma, guess what? We're going on a cruise to the Caribbean. Can you believe it? 7 days on a huge liner, and it's all free. The last phrase was said with a special pleasure, and I realized that he said it on purpose so that I could hear it. You... I couldn't find the words for my outrage. Look, Mom, I gotta go. Thelma wants to talk about what to bring. Thanks for the gift. You're the best. And he hung up, leaving me in a daze of shock and anger. I didn't cry. Strangely enough, I hadn't shed a tear since talking to Doug. Instead of the usual bitterness and resentment, a cold, throbbing rage filled me. I sat in my chair, clutching the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white, and stared at one point. Images of the past flashed before me. All the times Doug had taken advantage of my kindness and generosity. All the times he'd manipulated me, making me feel guilty for not being a good enough mother. I spent the entire evening in a daze. Didn't turn on the TV, didn't read a book, didn't even eat dinner. I just sat and thought about my life, about my son, about how we had come to this state of affairs. Oscar, seeing my condition, jumped on my lap and purred softly, as if trying to comfort me. The next morning, I called the cruise company. I explained the situation in a voice trembling with excitement. My son had changed the passenger data without my knowledge, and I wanted everything back the way it was. The young man on the line was polite but adamant. I'm sorry, Mrs. Tanner, but company policy does not allow changing passenger names after the reservation has been paid in full without a substantial penalty. In fact, it would be considered canceling the current reservation and creating a new one, which means losing all the discounts and promotions you received on the original reservation. But it was my son who changed the details without my permission. I could feel the wave of anger rising inside again. This is fraud. I understand your frustration, he continued patiently. But the changes were made through your account. Technically speaking, the system has recorded that you did it. If you believe fraud has occurred, you should contact the police. Police, reporting against my own son. Even in my current state, I couldn't do that. It would mean a complete breakdown of the relationship, a scandal that would probably affect the grandchildren. No, there had to be another way. What if I could prove that the payment was made on my credit card? I asked hopefully. That doesn't change the situation, Mrs. Tanner. The cruise contract is with the person named on the reservation, regardless of who made the payment. Many people pay for cruises for their family or friends. I thanked him and hung up, feeling even more defeated. Had Doug really won? Should I just accept that he had stolen my dream? I spent the rest of the day in a state of numbness. Didn't answer the phone, not even when Barbara called. Just sat in my chair, staring out the window at the neighbor's maple tree, its young leaves fluttering in the spring breeze. Finally, toward evening, I forced myself to eat. Just peanut butter toast and tea, but it was better than nothing. And then, just as I was about to put the dishes away, it hit me. I could still log into the reservation system. Doug had changed the passenger names, but not my account password. I still have access to manage my trip details. With suddenly revived energy, I rushed to the computer. My hands shook a little as I entered my login and recovered password. But the system let me in without a problem. There it was, my reservation, now with Doug and Thelma's names instead of mine. I started researching what else could be changed on the reservation other than passenger names. And with each new tab I opened, my mood improved. Oh, the possibilities were numerous. The first thing I did was check to see which stateroom Doug had chosen. Of course, he hadn't kept my original one, a modest balcony stateroom on deck 8. Instead, he upgraded it to a mini suite on deck 10 with an extended balcony and access to the Tranquility Zone, a special adults-only part of the ship with a private pool and lounge chairs. The extra charge for this, of course, went on my credit card. Well, I thought, let's see how you like the other cabin. The system allowed you to change cabin category without changing the cost if it was a downgrade. I opened the ship's schematic and started looking for the most unfortunate arrangement. After a few minutes of searching, I found the perfect one, a stateroom on the third deck, directly above the engine room and next to the elevator shaft. Based on the reviews I found on a cruise forum, this was one of the noisiest places on the ship. I made the change and received a confirmation. Your stateroom has been successfully changed to room 312 on deck 3. The difference in cost of $480 will be refunded to your credit card within 7 to 10 business days. Not a bad start. Not only had I ruined their comfort, but I had also gotten some of my money back. Encouraged by this success, I continued to research what else I could change. The next item on my list was excursions. Doug added several expensive excursions to the reservation: snorkeling in the Bahamas, a trip to waterfalls in Jamaica, a tour of Mayan ruins in Mexico. The total cost of all these activities was almost $700. One by one, I canceled all these tours. Cancellation of the tours has been confirmed. Funds will be refunded to your credit card. Now that Doug and Thelma won't have any pre-booked excursions, they'll have to choose from what's left available when they get to the ship. And by then, the most popular options will be sold out. Next, I noticed the packages that Doug had added to the reservations. A premium beverage package that allows you to order unlimited alcoholic beverages, cocktails, and premium non-alcoholic beverages. A high-speed internet package. A specialty dining package giving access to paid restaurants on board. All of this, of course, was paid for with my card. I canceled everything. Every package, every extra service. The system confirmed each time that the funds would be refunded to me. Now let's get to the nutritional details. Under the Food Preferences tab, there was a standard menu with no restrictions. I changed it to a strict low-salt vegetarian diet for both passengers. Doug loves steaks and seafood, and Thelma can't imagine life without fried chicken. Let's see how they like a week on veggies and tofu. The next item is dinner time. Cruise companies usually offer several dinner shifts in the main restaurant. Doug chose the late shift, 8:30 in the evening. I knew he and Thelma liked late dinners, especially on vacation when they could relax and not be rushed. I changed the time to the earliest shift, 6 o'clock in the evening. Now they would have to cut short their afternoon vacation or return early from shore excursions to make it in time for dinner. Then I turned my attention to the Special Request tab. Here, passengers could specify any special wishes or needs, from extra pillows to organizing holidays on board. And then a brilliant idea struck me. I wrote, "Passengers Douglas and Thelma Tanner are celebrating 25 years together, silver wedding anniversary, on this cruise. Please arrange a special surprise for them during the captain's formal dinner. Douglas is very shy, but will be touched by the public congratulations." I knew that cruise companies like to celebrate passengers' special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, honeymoons. It usually involves a public congratulations from the captain or cruise director, a special cake, and a song sung by the waitstaff. Doug hated being the center of attention, especially in unfamiliar surroundings, and Thelma would probably wonder why he said they'd been married 25 years when in fact their marriage had only lasted 8. I was pleased to send the request and received an automated response. "Your request has been accepted. Our customer service team will contact you with more details." Well, have them contact me. I'll be happy to clarify the details of this celebration. After that, I poked around the system some more, trying to find additional ways to screw up their trip. Alas, there was nothing else of substance that could be changed. But I had already done enough. To summarize, I mentally listed all my improvements to their cruise: noisy lower deck cabin instead of a suite, no pre-booked excursions, no drink packages, internet or specialty restaurants, strict vegetarian diet, early dinner instead of late dinner, public silver wedding celebration during the formal dinner, plus a refund of almost $1,200 to my credit, on my credit card. Not bad for a start, but I wanted more. I wanted Doug and Thelma to remember this cruise forever, like I would remember their betrayal. Just ruining part of the experience for them didn't seem enough. I needed something else, something that would touch them more deeply. The next day, I called Barbara and told her everything that had happened. She was outraged to the core. "How insolent!" she exclaimed. "Jean, you should sue him. It's pure theft." "I know, but, he's my son, Barb. Anyway, I don't want to take legal action against my own child." "Then what are you going to do?" I told her about my manipulation of the reservation. Barbara laughed. "Jean Tanner, I never realized you had such a conniving nature lurking inside you. Proud of you, my friend." "Thank you, but I don't think it's enough. I want them to remember this cruise for the rest of their lives." Barbara thought for a moment. "You know, my daughter Melissa has a friend who works for a cruise company. Not the same one as your cruise, but maybe she can offer some advice." "That would be wonderful." I felt a surge of hope. "I'll call her today. We'll see what she has to say." That evening, Barbara called back. "Jean, I talked to Lucy, Melissa's friend. She's been working in customer service at the cruise company for 5 years, and she has some ideas." I braced myself to listen, feeling a spark of anticipation ignite inside me. "First," Barbara began, "you could send an email to the cruise company on Doug's behalf, telling them that he's allergic to sunscreen and needs special lotions. They'll make a note in the system, and the staff will have to ask him every day if his sensitive skin is okay." I smiled. Doug had always been obsessed with his image, and constant reminders of his problem skin would get on his nerves. She also suggested booking special lectures or workshops on board for them. For example, a class on dancing for older couples or how to deal with intimacy problems after 50. "But Doug is only 42 and Thelma is 39, I pointed out. "They're clearly not the target audience for such events." "That's just it. Imagine their faces when they show up at registration and they're told, 'Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Tanner, we've reserved seats for you at the Sexuality in the Golden Age seminar this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I couldn't help but laugh. That would be really humiliating for them. "And the last idea from Lucy is the most insidious," Barbara continued. "You could leave a comment in the system that Doug and Thelma are very interested in buying a timeshare or shares in the cruise company. Then they might be invited to a presentation to potential investors, which Lucy said could last for hours and could be extremely intrusive." All of these ideas sounded tempting, but required action beyond what I could do through the standard booking interface. I needed to contact the cruise company directly. Barbara, could your Lucy advise me on the best way to send such requests so they don't look suspicious? She said the best way is to write to the official customer service email, and preferably use the same email listed on the reservation. You have access to Doug's email, right? No, unfortunately. But my email is on the reservation. Doug apparently didn't feel the need to change it. Then use it. Just come up with a plausible explanation as to why you, a woman, are writing on Doug's behalf. I thought about it for a moment. I could say that I'm his assistant and I'm helping with the travel arrangements. That's a great idea. After talking to Barbara, I sat down at my computer and opened my email. I created a new email addressed to the cruise company's customer service department. Good afternoon. My name is Joan Perkins and I am Mr. Douglas Tanner's personal assistant. Reservation number XT56749. Mr. Tanner has asked me to contact you with several questions regarding his upcoming cruise. First, Mr. Tanner and his wife are extremely interested in investment opportunities with your company. Mr. Tanner has requested to know if there are presentations on board for potential investors, and if so, to enroll them in all available sessions. Second, Mr. Tanner suffers from a rare form of photodermatitis, allergy to sunscreen. He requires special lotions, which he will bring with him. He requested that staff be notified so that he can be reminded regularly to update his protection, especially while on the outdoor decks. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Tanner would like to attend all available educational seminars on board, especially related to staying healthy and active in older age. Mr. Tanner is particularly interested in topics related to maintaining intimate relationships after 50. I would be grateful to acknowledge receipt of this information and mark their reservations accordingly. Sincerely, Joan Perkins, assistant to Mr. D. Tanner. I reread the letter several times, made minor edits, and finally hit send. My heart was pounding like I was doing something extremely risky, but at the same time, I felt a strange satisfaction. For the first time in years, I was fighting back, not just accepting whatever life threw at me. 2 hours later, I received a reply. Dear Ms. Perkins, thank you for your application. We have made all the requested notations on Mr. and Mrs. Tanner's reservation. Regarding their interest in investing, there are indeed information sessions on board for potential investors. We have made reservations for them for 3 presentations on different days of the cruise. Regarding Mr. Tanner's photodermatitis, this information has been relayed to the ship's medical staff. A note has also been made to deck staff to remind Mr. Tanner to protect himself on a regular basis. Regarding educational seminars, we have signed up Mr. and Mrs. Tanner for the following sessions: Joint Health After 60, Day 2, 10 a.m., Sexuality in the Golden Age, Day 4, 2 p.m., How to Avoid Falls on Board for Older Passengers, Day 5, 11 a.m. If you have any further questions, feel free to get in touch. Sincerely, Maria Rodriguez, Customer Service. I leaned back in my chair, feeling satisfied and slightly anxious at the same time. What had I done? This revenge was petty, unworthy of an adult. But then I remembered Doug's words, "Thanks, but I'm going without you," and his laughter as he bragged to Thelma about the free cruise. No, he deserved it all. They both deserved it. The next day, an email arrived from the cruise company regarding my request for Doug and Thelma's silver wedding celebration. They asked for the exact anniversary date so they could prepare an appropriate certificate, and asked if we would like a special cake or other extras. I replied that the anniversary was on the 4th day of the cruise, and yes, we would like to order cake and champagne for the entire table. I chose the most expensive cake option and the most expensive champagne offered. After all, since Doug likes to use my money so much, let him enjoy it to the fullest. A few days later, I received a notice that my credit card had been charged for the cake and champagne. But this expense didn't upset me. I saw it as an investment in my sanity. Every day I checked my reservation, fearing that Doug would discover my changes and try to refund everything. But it seemed he was too busy preparing for his cruise to look into the details of the reservation, or maybe he just didn't expect me to be so sneaky. After all, in all these years I'd never once fought back. A week before the cruise departed, I received another email from the cruise company. They informed me that due to maintenance work on the ship, the cabin category I had chosen for Doug and Thelma was unavailable. As compensation, they offered a free upgrade to a cabin on Deck 5, also near the elevators, but no longer above the engine room. It blurred the effect of my revenge a bit, but I decided that Deck 5 near the elevators wasn't the quietest place on the ship either. Besides, all my other improvements were still in effect. Finally, the day of sailing arrived. I knew Doug and Thelma were scheduled to leave for Miami early in the morning. They had left the grandchildren with Thelma's parents, apparently deciding that the maternal grandmother was more reliable than me. All day I was in a strange state of anxious anticipation. I tried to do the usual things, went to the store, watered the flowers, watched my favorite show on TV. But my thoughts kept returning to Doug and Thelma. I wondered if they were already on board. Had they already discovered that their cabin was not at all what they had hoped for? How did they react to the vegetarian menu and lack of pre-booked excursions? In the evening, I couldn't take it anymore and sent Doug a text. "Hope you made it to the ship safely. Enjoy your vacation." The reply came an hour later. "Yes, we are on board. The cabin is not quite what we expected, but we have been offered compensation in the form of free drinks for tonight. Thank you for your concern." His tone was dry, but without much hostility. Apparently, he hadn't yet discovered all the surprises I had prepared for them. Or perhaps he didn't want to give me the satisfaction of showing his frustration. I smiled and disconnected the phone. Let them enjoy their perfect vacation. The first day was just the beginning. There would be many more exciting things ahead of them. The morning after the ship left was surprisingly calm. I woke up as usual around 6, drank coffee on the veranda, and even had time to read a fresh newspaper brought by the delivery man. No calls or messages from Doug. Apparently, the first evening on the cruise had passed without much incident, or my son had decided not to share his experiences with me. Around 10 o'clock, I headed to the local Home Depot hardware store. For several years now, I had been putting off renovating the upstairs bathroom. The tile there was cracked and the faucet in the sink was starting to leak. Harold always said he'd take care of it next weekend, but he never got around to it. After he died, I just closed off that bathroom and only used the one on the first floor. But now that my cruise plans were ruined, I had some free time and, importantly, some extra money. The very same money that came back on my credit card after my manipulation of Doug's reservation. At the store, I was a little confused as I looked at the endless rows of tile, faucets, tubs, and other accessories. For all the years of our marriage, Harold had done the home renovations, and I had only picked out colors and materials. Now I had to do it all myself. "Can I help you with something?" I heard a voice behind me and turned around. In front of me stood a man about my age, wearing a blue shirt with the store's logo. His gray hair was neatly cut and his brown eyes were friendly. "Yeah, I guess so," I answered with relief. "I need to renovate the bathroom, but I have no idea where to start." "My name is Frank." He held out his hand. "I work here as a bathroom and kitchen remodeling consultant. If you'll allow me to ask you a few questions and we'll make a plan of action together." We spent the next hour discussing the condition of my bathroom, my budget, and my design wishes. Frank proved to be a patient and knowledgeable conversationalist. He explained everything in simple terms, not trying to impress me with technical terms as men often do when talking to older women. "You know, Mrs. Tanner," he said as we picked out the tiles and plumbing fixtures, "you can hire professionals from our store to install it all, but that would cost you about 3 times the cost of the materials." "Is there an alternative?" I asked, figuring out my budget. "Well, you could hire an independent contractor. They usually charge less," he mumbled. Actually, I do a little remodeling myself in my spare time. If you'd like, I can take a look at your bathroom and give you an estimate." In any other situation, I'd probably say no. Inviting a strange man into my house when I live alone? It went against every safety rule I'd instilled in myself over the years. But there was something about Frank's open gaze that inspired confidence. Besides, he worked at a big store, so he must have passed at least a minimal background check. "Okay," I decided. "What time could you come by?" "I get off at 5 today. I could drop by around 6 if that's okay." We exchanged phone numbers and addresses. Frank promised to come by tonight, and in the meantime, he arranged for me to deliver the materials I'd chosen the next day. Back home, I felt a strange excitement. When was the last time I had invited a non-family man into my home? Not counting plumbers, electricians, and other laborers called in as needed, never. Harold and I had been pretty insular, and since his death, I'd minimized social contact. I spent an hour tidying the house, though it was clean enough as it was. Then I changed into a more decent dress instead of the homemade pants and t-shirt I usually wore around the house. It's just a business meeting, I told myself. No need to be nervous. Around 4 in the afternoon, the first text from Doug came in. I was just dusting off the bookshelves when my phone beeped, alerting me to a new text. Mom, what the hell is going on with our reservation? They gave us a vegetarian menu? Vegetarian! You know how much I hate that grass. What's going on? I felt my lips involuntarily stretch into a smile. So the first surprise had already been discovered. I decided not to answer right away. Let him suffer. 15 minutes later, another message came. And why did they sign us up for some stupid seminar, Joint Health After 60? We were told it was you who requested these activities for us. What kind of nonsense is that? I was laughing outright now. I imagined Doug's face when he was informed of this exciting activity. He must have been furious. I still didn't answer, and soon the phone rang. Doug. I took a deep breath and answered, Hey, son, how are you resting? Mom, what's going on? His voice sounded tense. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. Lower deck cabin, noisy as hell. No drink packages or internet, no booked excursions, and that damn vegetarian menu. Did you do something about the reservations? I paused, savoring the moment. Oh, Doug, I'm so sorry, I finally said with fake sympathy. There must have been some kind of error in rebooking the reservation. You know, computers are so unreliable in the hands of people of my generation. Silence on the other end of the wire. Then, you did that on purpose, didn't you? His voice oozed venom. You're getting back at us? Why would I want revenge on you, dear? I tried to keep my voice innocent. For stealing my dream? For taking the tickets I paid for with my own money? For bragging to your wife about a free cruise at my expense? No, come on, why would I want revenge? You. He clearly couldn't find the words. That's low, Mom. Even for you. Low? Now I couldn't hide my anger. It's low to steal a dream from your own mother. It's low to take advantage of her kindness and generosity for years and then repay her like this. You wanted my cruise? Well, you can have it with all my improvements. I demand that you make it right, now. Doug was almost shouting. I'm afraid that's not possible, son. As the cruise company has probably explained to you by now, changes to a reservation once the cruise has started are not allowed. Those are the rules. There was a long pause. I could almost hear Doug trying to control his rage. You're going to regret this, he finally hissed. When we get back, we'll have a serious conversation. I look forward to it, I replied and hung up. I expected to feel guilty, or at least slightly regretful after this conversation. But instead, I felt a strange sense of relief, almost euphoria. For the first time in years, I had fought back, stood up for myself, and the feeling was intoxicating. The rest of the day passed in pleasant excitement. I even made a small dinner, just in case Frank got hungry while I was checking out the bathroom. At 6 sharp, the doorbell rang. Frank stood on the doorstep holding a small suitcase of tools. Good evening, Mrs. Tanner, he smiled. I hope I'm not late? No, you're right on time, I stepped back, letting him into the house. And please call me Jean. Only if you call me Frank. He took off his cap, exposing his graying head. I led him upstairs to the bathroom, which was in need of renovation. Frank inspected the room with professional attention, checking the condition of the pipes, tapping the walls, measuring the dimensions. Well, it's not as much work as it could be, he said finally. The tiles are cracked, but the base of the walls is in good condition. The plumbing is old, but the pipes don't need replacing. I think I can do it all in about a week, working evenings and maybe weekends. How much will it cost? I asked, preparing myself for a large sum. Frank quoted a figure that was much lower than I expected. I even asked him if he had made a mistake. No, that's right, he smiled. I only charge for my work, no markups or markdowns like the big companies do. Besides, he said, a little embarrassed, I just like working with my hands. It helps, not to think about things. A shadow flashed in his eyes. And I suddenly realized that maybe Frank had been through a loss, too. Maybe he's a widower like me. Would you like to have dinner? I suddenly asked. I'd made some food, and it would be a shame if it went to waste. Frank looked surprised, but pleasantly so. I'd love to, if it wouldn't give you any trouble. We went down to the kitchen and I set the table. Over dinner, the conversation flowed easily and casually. Frank told me that he had been widowed 5 years ago. His wife Martha had died of cancer. They had been married for 37 years and raised 2 children who now lived in other states. The kids call once a week. Sometimes they come for the holidays, he said, stirring his tea in his cup. But mostly I'm on my own. That's why I decided to work part-time at Home Depot. There's nothing to do at home anyway, but at least this way I can socialize with people. I understand, I nodded. After Harold died, the house felt so empty. Sometimes I talk to the cat, just to hear someone's voice other than my own. You have a cat? Frank perked up. Where is he now? Oscar usually hides when strangers come over, but if you're late, he might come out to meet you. As if on cue, Oscar appeared in the kitchen doorway, a striped gray cat with amber eyes. He sniffed the air cautiously, assessing the new person in the house. Hi, buddy, Frank said softly, holding his hand out palm up. Don't worry, I won't hurt your mistress. To my surprise, the usually cautious Oscar came up to Frank and let himself be petted. In a minute, he was rubbing against his legs, begging for more petting. Wow, I shook my head. He doesn't usually trust strangers. He must have liked you. I've always had a special relationship with cats, Frank smiled. Martha said I was a cat in a past life. We laughed and the conversation moved on. I talked about my work as an accountant, about how Harold and I had saved for a secure old age, about my grandchildren. I couldn't resist telling the story of the cruise and how Doug stole my tickets. No, really? Frank seemed genuinely outraged. How could you do that to your own mother? Doug and I have a complicated relationship, I sighed. He always thought I owed him something, and I've been an idiot, indulging him instead of putting him in his place. So what did you do? Frank asked. After he stole your tickets. I was embarrassed. Talking about my petty revenge seemed a little embarrassing. But on the other hand, I felt that Frank wouldn't judge me. I made some adjusted their reservations, I admitted, and told him about all the improvements I'd made to Doug and Thelma's cruise. To my relief, Frank didn't look shocked. On the contrary, he laughed. Gene, that's brilliant, he exclaimed, wiping away his tears. I never would have guessed that such a sweet woman would be capable of such an elaborate revenge. Don't you think it was a little petty of me? I asked, still a little embarrassed by my actions. Petty? Frank shook his head. No, it was a fair payback. He stole a dream from you. You made that dream turn into a nightmare for him. Seemed fair to me. His words were a balm to my conscience. We talked about nothing all evening, laughing and swapping life stories. Frank proved to be a great storyteller, with a subtle sense of humor and an amazing ability to listen. When the clock struck 10, he realized, gosh, I didn't realize how much time had flown by. I have to go home. I have to get up early for work tomorrow. Thanks for the company, I thanked him sincerely. It had been a long time since I'd had such a pleasant evening. Likewise, he smiled. I'll start on your bathroom tomorrow night if that's okay. The materials should be delivered in the afternoon. Sure, I'll be waiting. I walked Frank to the door and returned to the kitchen, clearing the table. It felt light and peaceful in a way I hadn't in a long time. It was nice to spend an evening in the company of someone who was really listening, not just waiting for his turn to talk. The week flew by unnoticed. The bathroom on the second floor had been transformed beyond recognition. New tiles of soft blue color, a modern shower cabin instead of the old bathtub, gleaming chrome faucets. All this created a feeling of freshness and comfort. Frank finished the job on time as promised, although he stayed late a few times and we had dinner together. Each day I grew more accustomed to his presence in the house. He was neat, never left a mess behind, and always asked my opinion before making any repair decisions. And our evening conversations became something of a ritual I looked forward to all day. The rare messages from Doug were short and angry. He complained about the noisy cabin, the intrusive staff constantly asking about his sensitive skin, The endless investor presentations that he and Thelma had somehow been signed up for all days of the cruise. But the highlight was the announcement of the silver wedding. Mom, this is out of line. They called us to the captain's dinner and put on a whole show congratulating us on 25 years of marriage. In front of all the passengers. Thelma's furious. She thinks I set it all up to make her look older. And when we tried to explain that we'd only been married 8 years, they didn't believe us. They said the reservation clearly said silver wedding. It's war, Mom. War! I couldn't contain my laughter as I read this message. I pictured Doug and Thelma's faces red with anger and embarrassment as the entire restaurant applauded their long and happy marriage, especially Thelma, who had always been obsessed with her looks and age. The thought that the entire ship now considered her a woman who had been married for at least 25 years must have infuriated her. On the last day before Doug and Thelma returned, I told Frank all the details of my revenge. We sat on the veranda, sipping tea and watching the sun slip toward sunset. So what now? Frank asked after laughing off the silver wedding story. They're coming back tomorrow, right? Yeah, their plane lands at 2 in the afternoon, I sighed. I'm sure they'll come here to tell me what they think. Are you dreading this meeting? I wondered. In the past, I would certainly have been afraid. Doug's anger, his accusations, Thelma's scornful look, all of it usually made me feel small and guilty. But now, no, I answered firmly. I'm not afraid. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I did the right thing. They stole my dream, and I repaid them in kind. That's fair. Frank nodded approvingly. That's the spirit. Keep it up when they come. I'll do my best, I smiled. Thanks for listening to all my stories, and for the bathroom too, of course. You're welcome. He looked at me warmly. You know, Jean, this week has been special for me. Since Martha's death, I've rarely spent time in anyone's company but my coworkers, and you're so easy and pleasant to talk to. I felt a blush flood my cheeks. At my 78th, like a girl, really. It was a pleasure, too, I admitted. I don't know what I'm going to do in the evenings now that the renovations are finished. Well, Frank hesitated. We could keep seeing each other. Not for the renovation, but just like that. Maybe go out, a movie or a restaurant. He looked so cute in his embarrassment that I couldn't help but smile. I'd love to, I replied, and the tension I hadn't even realized I'd had let go of both of us. We agreed to call the next day after Doug and Thelma's visit. Frank offered his moral support, but I declined. This was my battle, and I had to handle it on my own. On Sunday, at exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, fixed my hair, and went to open it. Doug and Thelma were there, both looking like they'd just swallowed a lemon. Hello, Mom, Doug hissed, walking past me into the hallway without even waiting for an invitation. Thelma followed, giving me a cold nod. Good afternoon. I closed the door and turned to them. How was the cruise? Thelma made a sound like an angry cat snorting. Doug, on the other hand, just stared at me with a hard stare. How was the cruise? He repeated with a venomous tone. Really, Mom? You're still asking? Well, I thought you'd have something to tell me, I shrugged, keeping my composure. Come into the living room. Would you like some tea? No, we don't want tea. Thelma finally burst into tears. We want an explanation. This has been the worst vacation of our lives. I went into the living room and sat down in my favorite chair, gesturing for them to sit on the couch across from me. They remained standing, glaring at me with indignant looks. I'd say I'm sorry, but that wouldn't be true, I said calmly. I did make some adjustments to your reservation. Adjustments? Doug was almost shouting. You've made our vacation a living hell. A stateroom above the engine room where you could hear every sneeze. A vegetarian diet, you know how much I hate that weed. Stupid seminars for old people, and that's not all. A silver wedding, Thelma cut in, her cheeks flaming with indignation. Everyone on the ship now thinks I'm 20 years older. 20 years, Jean! How could you? I watched their angry tirades in silence, feeling strangely calm. In the past, such a confrontation would have made me cringe, looking for ways to reconcile, apologizing even though it wasn't my fault. But not now. Well, I said when they'd exhausted themselves a bit, now you know what it's like to have someone ruin what you were counting on. I've been dreaming about this cruise, saved up the money, I planned it, and you just stole it from me. We didn't steal it, Doug objected. We just, diverted unwise spending. Irrational spending? I raised an eyebrow. It's my money, Doug. Money I've earned, saved, put away over the years. And I have every right to spend it as I see fit, even if you don't think it's wise. But you're old. Thelma seemed completely out of control. What's the point of spending all that money on a cruise at your age? You're gonna. She didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. You're going to die soon anyway. That's how they looked at me. Like an old woman whose life was almost over, whose wishes and dreams didn't matter. Soon what, Thelma? I looked her straight in the eye. Die? Is that what you mean? Thelma looked away, suddenly embarrassed. I just meant that traveling can be tiring at your age, she mumbled unconvincingly. You know what the saddest part is? I shook my head. You don't even see how wrong this all is. You think you have the right to control my life, my money, my time. It's like I'm no longer a person but some kind of appendage to your family, a source of funding and a free babysitter when it suits you. Doug and Thelma looked at each other, clearly not expecting such a rebuff. Mom, you're exaggerating, Doug began in a conciliatory tone. We just wanted to. No, I held up my hand to stop him. I know exactly what you wanted. You wanted a free vacation at my expense. Well, you got it, with all my improvements. Consider it a lesson learned. A lesson? Doug was starting to boil again. Are you punishing us like children? How else am I supposed to talk to you? You're acting like children. Selfish, spoiled children who think the whole world should revolve around them. There was a long pause. Thelma was the first to break the silence. You know what, Jean? I always told Doug there was something wrong with you. A normal mother wouldn't do this to her son. A normal grandmother wouldn't let her grandchildren down like that. Let her grandchildren down? I didn't understand her. What are you talking about? We promised the kids we'd bring them presents from the cruise, Doug interjected. But because of your manipulation of the reservation, we didn't have any money left for souvenirs. Can you imagine how upset Emma and Josh were? I could barely contain my laughter. Were they really trying to put the blame on me even for that? First of all, I said, choosing my words carefully, I didn't ask you to promise the kids gifts from the trip you stole. Second, I'm sure Emma and Josh would be far more upset to learn that their father had stolen from their own mother. And third, if you need money for gifts for your grandchildren, you can always use your own instead of relying on mine. We're tight on money right now. Doug looked almost resentful. Thelma wants to update the kitchen, and Emma's birthday is coming up, and she's asking for a party at that new entertainment center. Not my problem, I shrugged. You're adults with good jobs. Learn to live within your means. Doug stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time in his life. You've changed, Mom. What happened to you? I haven't changed, Doug. I just stopped letting you guys push me around. Okay. He took a deep breath, as if gathering his strength. I understand that you're resentful about this cruise, but we can fix it. You spent a lot of money on this trip, and because of our misunderstandings, you didn't get what you hoped for. What's your point? I asked, even though I already knew where he was going. Thelma and I think it's only fair that you reimburse us for the cost of this ruined vacation, he said with casual nonchalance. And we'll help you organize a new cruise, later when the time is right. I stared at him, not believing my ears. After everything that had happened, he was still trying to get money out of me. Doug, I said very calmly, are you really asking me now to pay you for the trip you stole from me, which I ruined as revenge? He looked a little embarrassed, but quickly pulled himself together. Well, if you look at it this way, out, I said quietly. What? Doug blinked. I said out of my house, I repeated, getting up from the chair. Now. Mom, you can't just. I can, I pointed to the door. And I'm doing it. Go away. Thelma grabbed Doug's hand. Come on, honey, see? She's completely out of her mind. It's no use talking. You're going to regret this. Doug threw me an angry look. We're not bringing the kids back. Never. You'll never see them again. It's your choice, I replied calmly. But know that I'll always be happy to see Emma and Josh. And if you try to turn them against me, I will tell them the truth about what happened. The whole truth. Thelma snorted. As if they'd believe an old woman over their own parents. Maybe, I agreed. But children grow up, Thelma. And sooner or later, they begin to see the truth for themselves without other people's clues. That seemed to hurt her. She pulled Doug toward the exit. Let's go, I'm sick of all this. They walked out, slamming the door loudly. I sat back in my chair and took a deep breath. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking a little. But overall, I felt liberated, as if the huge weight I'd been carrying on my shoulders for years had suddenly disappeared. Oscar jumped into my lap, meowing demandingly. Yeah, buddy. I stroked his head. You're right. I should have done this a long time ago. That evening, Frank called. How'd it go? He asked me without preamble. Better than I expected, I answered, surprised at my own calmness. They yelled, threatened, tried to manipulate me, but I held firm. In the end, I had to kick them out the door. Kick them out the door? I could hear the admiration in his voice. Gene Tanner, you surprise me more every day. Me too, I admitted. I never thought I could do this. But you know what the weirdest thing is? I don't feel any guilt or regret, just, relief. It's not weird, Frank said softly. You've finally stopped letting them use you. It's a healthy reaction. You're probably right. I was quiet for a second. But they threaten not to bring any more grandchildren. That's the only thing that bothers me. They're empty threats, Frank said confidently. Who's going to babysit for free if not you? They'll be back as soon as they need a nanny. I guess, I sighed. But this time it's going to be different. I won't be jumping on their command anymore. That's right, Frank approved. Speaking of teams, I have a suggestion. Next weekend is the Blue Ridge Mountain Folkcraft Festival. There'll be exhibits, music, food. I thought maybe we could go. It's only 2 hours from here. A festival? I blinked in surprise. It sounds wonderful, but it's not a date, is it? Why wouldn't it be? I could hear the smile in his voice. If you don't mind, of course. I felt the blood rush to my cheeks. A date, at my 78th, with a man who makes me feel alive. I don't mind, I answered quietly. I don't mind at all. That's great. Frank sounded boyishly excited. I'll pick you up Saturday morning, say 8 o'clock. We could spend the whole day there and have dinner somewhere cozy in the evening. Sounds like a plan, I smiled, though he couldn't see it. After talking to Frank, I sat on the veranda for a long time, watching the stars and thinking about how strangely my life had turned in recent weeks. It had started with the stolen cruise, an event that in another time might have broken me, driven me deeper into my shell of loneliness and humility. But instead, I fought back. For the first time in years, I stood up for myself, refused to be a victim, refused to let others decide how I should live my life and where I should spend my money and time. And that small victory led to a chain of events that completely changed my daily routine. The bathroom renovation I'd been putting off for years. Meeting Frank, a man who listens, understands, and seems to really appreciate me for who I am. A straight talk with Doug and Thelma, without prevarication or self-incrimination. Maybe sometimes you have to lose something valuable to gain something even more important. I didn't get the cruise I dreamed of, but instead of a week on the ship, I got a new life. A life where I finally feel like I'm not a shadow, not an appendage to someone else's fate, but a full human being with my own desires, dreams, and right to happiness. Saturday morning, I stood in front of the mirror trying to decide what to wear to the festival. A summer dress or pants and blouse, a sun hat or a light scarf. These were such pleasant, such normal worries. When the doorbell rang, I was ready. Frank stood on the doorstep with a small bouquet of wildflowers. Good morning, he said, holding out the flowers to me. Ready for your adventure? More than ready, I replied, taking the bouquet and feeling a smile spread across my face. More than ready,